When I watch this, you know that trembling feeling inside. You see, it's like having something very delicate in front of you. For me, this is joy. This is rowing. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and a very warm welcome here from the Arm Training channel. Thank you very much for watching. Today, I'm going to have a look at the Under 23 Men's 4 of the World Champs 2022. The interesting thing is that GB is starting to show dominance again, but even more interesting, New Zealand has brought up an excellent 4, and so has Ireland. It's actually a 3-horse race. New Zealand, Ireland and Great Britain. And the way to do it is quite astonishing. I watched the race I think 3 or 4 times, trying to find out what are the details. And there's always the factor of physical or physiological differences in terms of power output. It is a difference whether or not somebody has a 400 watt anaerobic threshold steady state or 350 watts. And it is a difference whether or not somebody does, I don't know, a 650 in the single or somebody does a 710 in the single. So these are the factors I cannot talk about. What I can talk about is how to use upper body weight, how to use leverage, some of the rigging differences and also style differences. A quick look at the Romanians. Super interesting the way they row. High stroke rate, traditionally actually already. They keep a pretty high stroke for almost the entire race. Look at that. And you see there's almost no upper body swing. They're here in the background. It's almost impossible to see. So the camera is shaky and the picture, and there are lots of boats in the background. But you can see that high stroke rate only works if you omit the upper body use at the finish completely. So they are actually pulling down, they're washing down. I mean, Romania is not a newbie in sweep rowing. They have had huge tradition and they have had massive comeback over the last 5-6 years. So I'm pretty sure they will make their comeback, but the way they row now, I think it builds quite substantial speed over the first 500 to 700. When it comes to using upper body mass, they just don't do this. There's a tiny bit of motion, but not much. That's literally the only good shot we have of the Irish when we look at them from the side. So they will come into the picture now. I think of the top 3 medal-winning boats, their technique is probably the best. If you look at the way they use upper body leverage towards the finish, at the same time, they don't excessively lean back, and the way they synchronize their weight use. This is quite something. It's spectacular. This is high-class level. Just watch the center pair, legs, upper body weight already engaged, using arms, boom, out. That is very effective because they do not go for, this is 1 minute 18, so they do not go for high stroke rate just like the Romanians do or the Italians and try to do it at any cost. They are already in their game. And the game that I'm referring to is leg to upper body use. So using body weight. Body weight for me is one of the key and cornerstones of rowing. If you look at the stroke has a bit stiff inside shoulders, but that's irrelevant for now. One thing that is excellent to see, at the catch, he wants to bring the blade into the water. He raises his arm. He does not change upper body position. Then starts to drive. Hey, this is not just, yeah, it's nice. No, this is spectacular technique because this is an extreme situation. It's the A final of the World Championships and you're in stroke seed and you're just past the start. You're at about the 500 meter mark. Hey, this is spectacular to be able to pull this off. This is standard. This is his standard of rowing. So for me, there's no wonder the entire Irish 4 performed so well. Interestingly, their stroke rate is about 2 strokes higher than the British one. But it doesn't mean that they're lacking. Maybe they lack a bit of raw strength. I don't know, that is possible. Maybe they just have softer gearing. You never know. Maybe their cardiovascular training was in higher stroke rates. Possible. But the way to row, so Team Ireland, wow, chapeau, well done, absolutely. It is it's a very good role model. I can always refer someone under 23 World Championships, a final means 4. And say, oh, this is how they row? Yes. So this is a picture worthwhile attaining. I don't say copy everything they do, but I say look at them and look at the unified upper body leverage use. Looking at the Italians, huge pedigree in that boat class per se. But this time, I think they're not coherent enough. As the World Champs took place in Italy, of course, Italy was in the picture more than others. So we see quite a bit of them. And the way they use this massive weight factor of upper body leverage is a bit different. Whenever I do sweep analysis, people come up and say, hey, can I compare left and right side? Hey, legs and upper body are almost a linear lever. It's the shoulder girdle and arms that try to compensate that you're working around a pin. But using everything up to solar plexus is essentially linear. And the question is how you distribute legs to upper body use. That is, for me, one of the cornerstones. If you overdo it with the upper body, you create a different kind of force curve. All the bivers here behind me, they're built to teach you when to use which lever, so you have identical force curves in a race situation. So I play around with this stuff a lot on a daily basis. And this is why I'm keen to see this. And if you look at that boat, and of course you always have to guess. You can never say, oh, it's exactly how it works, and exactly what the force curves are. It's always a bit of guesswork. But if you see a couple hundred athletes every year, and you see their force curves, you kind of get the idea. So in this case here, if you just imagine, you were doing rope pulling, and you looked at the upper bodies. Here. Will they create the same effect as, for example, the Irish? Probably not. Let's look at two port side rowers. So 4 and 2. Legs? No. There is a difference in the way they swing. It may not be too apparent when we see them row now, but if you look at them in that context, so in regular race pace, they look excellent, but there's that tiny, tiny difference. Also now the Romanians. Now it becomes apparent it's a short stroke for the sake of high stroke rate. However, don't be mistaken. I do believe a lot of, in German there's a saying that a lot of paths lead to Rome. So there are many different ways of achieving one and the same goal of becoming world champion or the fastest in the world. It comes down to physiological capacity. It comes down to cardiovascular capacity and raw strength, which is essentially physiological capacity. And it comes down to synchronizing the force curves, and it comes down to how well synced is everybody else in the field. And that, for me, the more I do these video analysis sessions as this one right now, to me it becomes more apparent that this is one of the most deciding factors. The more synced up you are, and the less synced up the other boats are, the higher your chances are to win, even though you may not be super efficient from an objective, absolute point of view and say, oh, if you had to do picture perfect rowing, this is what it would look like. That's what makes rowing so interesting. There are never laboratory conditions, never. And the races certainly did not have laboratory conditions. Now the question is, does your technique suit the current conditions? Does your boat suit the current conditions? There's so many question marks. To me, the Romanian style was simply not effective for these conditions. The reason for that is that if you have rough conditions and you depend on high stroke rate, you've got an issue. Now, the Australians, I'm a big fan of their technique, generally speaking. Across all the Australian boats, I just like the late upper body swing, just like Two Men does here. I'm very much fond of this kind of rowing because I do believe it is the most effective rowing style. However, you can overdo it. And if you look at three-seed, for example, the upper body swing happens almost too late. So late that you may be in a position where your force curve drops and then you try to build it up again with the upper body swing. There's that takeover. It's like a 4x4 relay. So if you use that upper body lever a bit too late, your force curve will drop, and then you try to pick it up again, but it doesn't work. So the more and more I do these analysis sessions, the more I come to believe that probably the perfect way to row is something in between the British and the Australians. The British use their upper body distinctively around perpendicular. This is also what I tried to point out in the men's 8 analysis, just the video before this one. The Australians use them extremely late, which can be too late sometimes. And then you get the boat in the middle. And this is New Zealand. That's interesting. New Zealand is such a small nation, and you guys have the capacity to bring out boats at a superb quality, just as if it were standard or nothing. This is something that has impressed me ever since I started rowing. And this 4 is no difference. Legs, massive use, just at the right point of time. If you compare this with the Australians, you see, they do use their upper body, but quite distinctively a bit earlier, and their stroke is not so phased out. Legs, upper body, super stable shoulders. How nice this is. Look at number 2 seat. Oh, look at 1 seat. Elbow precision. That is unbelievable. That is excellent. Again, stable at the catch. Legs, upper body. He uses upper body a bit early. Okay, good. But this is quite spectacular. I mean, these are young athletes in their very early 20s. Otherwise, they couldn't row under 23. So this is spectacular maturity in terms of rowing. The way they are able to use their upper bodies and legs and create a nice punch around perpendicular is fantastic. I'm a big fan of New Zealand rowing. Let's talk about the British. Something very interesting happens right now. Watch 2 men. He makes a call. I hope you can see this anytime now. He makes a quick call. So he's actually the strategist in this boat. There he is, exactly. Same happened with Redgrave. Redgrave was in the midship, and he was the strategist for the boat. That is something that is quite opposite to what a lot, especially masters, believe, but also newcomers to rowing. They think stroke seat is like the boss in the boat. There is no boss. Everybody has different roles, depending on where you sit and what your overview capacity is. In stroke seat, you're responsible for the rhythm. But in, I call it counter stroke, so the guy behind stroke, in an 8-7 seat and in a 4-3 seat, you are the one to amplify the rhythm, especially entire midship. Also in an 8 midship is for me the cornerstone, because this is where the rhythm that is given by reliable stroke is being amplified. And amplification is for me a pure force thing. So using and distributing force in a very coherent way that everybody has to follow along. So as a stroke, you're like the conductor of a big engine. And the way you set the rhythm will be the way midship will amplify it. So be careful how you set it. And you have to be super predictable in stroke so that midship, it takes a while before they grasp what's going on, can take over your rhythm and amplify it for the rest of the team. Now, a 4 is a delicate subject because bow is already super well connected with stroke. And this is something I absolutely adore about the way they rig the boat. For me, this is one of the greatest advantages of tandem rig. They used to call it Italian rig, but now we see it so much with the British, you can actually call it the British rigging. So that tandem rig, where you have both athletes on bow side or stroke side, it doesn't really matter how you do it. And you have stroke and bow on the same side as well. helps to unify the way the positions are distributed in the boat. Stroke and bow have to be one unit. You would think, no, it's stroke pair. In my humble opinion, it is not. If you look at an 8, bow and stroke have to be more unified in the way to row than everybody else, because these are the farthest athletes apart from each other. So if your bow does something different in terms of force curves, in terms of rhythmization, then this boat is pretty much messed up. So you've got stroke and bow connecting in such a way that they even row the same side. And you got centership, midship connected in a way that they row same side. If they are not super well synced, their oars will clash. So this is, for me, one of the best ways to rig a 4. And if you look at 2-seed, I'm a big fan of this. Look at the way he starts to connect. Look at the way he connects with his legs, patient with the upper body, uses weight around perpendicular, and that huge tension at the finish. Also, the triangular body shape reminds me a lot of Matthew Pinsent. Massive. Absolutely, absolutely worthwhile attaining. I heard British rowing was in a massive crisis last year. I don't know what the current state of affairs is, but bringing out a boat like this, wow. This is quite spectacular. I understand why there were so many comments asking for a review of that boat class, because the way the British row is, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be too slow in the open age category as well. That capacity, look at centership, midship, a capacity to use legs and upper body weight as if it were the same person. Again, legs, upper body now, collected finish. That is mind-blowing. Interesting. Stroke seat reminds me a bit of Hamish Bond, the way he rows. That upper body swing to the side. But again, there's a reason why he is in the boat. GB has huge talent to choose from. Nice rhythm here. It is excellent. I could watch this boat for a long time. And look at bow seat. Look how he doesn't look out. He looks at the others. He's trying to play the game with the others. See this? Just watch his face. He's so well in tune with the entire team. When I watch this, you know that trembling feeling inside. You see, it's like having something very delicate in front of you. For me, this is joy. This is rowing. Apart from the fact that this is one of my absolute favorite boat classes. The way they propel, you know, in many sweep boats, you have people that do legs to arms in very short upper body. But if you compare this style, let's say, to the Romanian style, they're already very fast. It's A-final World Championships. That is a significant difference in styles, in the ability to use mass. And for me, this is also one of the explanations why the British are about 1 to 2 strokes per minute lower than the Irish. And the Irish already row extremely well. Here you can see the Romanians. They don't even use the part the British are using. See this? See the bow guy? Let's go back. Look at that. Mass, tack, mass. Again, now we'll see the Romanians. It's a different angle, but look at that. It's stroke rate, stroke rate, stroke rate, but there's not the same acceleration within the drive that the British have. You can say, okay, it's power, it's physiological capacity. Yes, quite well possible. But I still think it's a rowing style. It is a question of how you propel. If you just compare the Kiwis and the Romanians, see the massive acceleration the boat sees every time at the finish. Romanians don't do this. You can say, well, the Romanians are not interfering vertically with the boat so much. Yes. In German, there's a saying, it's called, you have to die one death. So there's no advantage without a disadvantage. It just doesn't exist. So if you are accelerating the boat towards the finish, of course you will displace more. That's normal. The boat will dip into the water, but these things are designed to do this. Of course, you want to reduce it to an absolute minimum, but you got to use some type of backswing. And this is why I'm not a big proponent of rowing feet out. Feet out will make you omit and forget about what it's like to use upper body weight towards the finish. And if you look at the Australian boat, they have, you see, there's not the same punch as the Kiwis have. If you just look, that post-finish acceleration. So the moment their hands come away, look at the Australians and look at the Kiwis. It is the different way of rowing. Same with the Australians. Same with the Romanians. Australia, Romania, New Zealand. Just look at the recovery boat speed. What is your impression? What does it, when you look at it, what do you perceive to be the case? For me as a coach, this is one of the most important phases. Yeah, fantastic, absolutely mind-blowing. And if you look at the distribution of boats, wow, I mean, Great Britain is not, this is a different world. This is a high-quality boat. And I reckon, if I'm not completely mistaken, at least some of these athletes, we will see them again in Paris. Hey, GB, with such quality in your hands, wow. How could there have ever been any type of crisis? 15 meters behind, that's a full boat length. 27 behind, another full boat length to the Irish. And Ireland, rowing Ireland, is putting out quality on such a massive scale. Tandem rig also has another side effect that the classic way of saying is you combine forces so that the boat goes straight. In case you have the weaker athletes, you put them together in midship. This is one way of explaining this, and it's certainly true, but you can always adjust with oar lengths and span and all that stuff. There are many different ways to compensate for that. To me personally, the tandem rig is a rhythm. It's a thing to build better rhythm. And there we see, yeah, GB win, New Zealand will be second, Ireland will be third with a massive gap. How impressive. Winning by a bit of open water ahead of New Zealand, one of the best rowing nations in the world, ahead of Ireland. And now, look at that. Now, the next boat, did you see this? Ireland stopped rowing, there's still open water. There is open, there's nothing. Nothing. And then the next boats will come in. Hey, ladies and gents, I'm going to close this off here. I'm going to hop on a byword, do some training myself now to become a human again. And yeah, I want to thank you for watching the video. And I would appreciate your comments. I love to read the comments. There are so many interesting inputs I get on a frequent basis. And thank you for the suggestions. Okay, my name's Aram. If you want to work with me, go to aramtraining.com. We do frequent live training sessions, video analysis sessions, and of course, my main task, training plan, strategic training planning. All right, with this being said, subscribe please, means a lot to me. Share the video, and I hope to see you well, safe and well in the next video. All the best, bye-bye.